Hey there, fellow YouTube enthusiasts. Today, we're diving into a topic that might make your eyes glaze over, but trust me, it's fascinating and way more important than you think, the world of medical devices and the hidden costs that come with them. Now, I'm not a medical expert, but I'm here to share some insights and opinions on this complex issue. So, buckle up, because we're about to explore the inner workings of Australia's medical device market and why it's a big deal for everyone involved. First things first, let's talk about the deal that went down in 2022. You see, weeks before the federal election, a secret agreement was made in then Health Minister Greg Hunt's office. This deal, as federal bureaucrats later revealed, locked 14 million privately insured Australians into paying some of the highest prices in the world for surgical hardware. Now, that's a big deal, because it means that instead of getting a fair shake, these Aussies were being overcharged. And the worst part? The deal went against the advice of the very bureaucrats who were supposed to be looking out for the best interests of the Australian community. But here's the twist: instead of nixing the agreement, the new health minister, Mark Butler, endorsed it. And get this, he instructed his department to enforce its terms. Now, I find this really interesting, because it raises a deeper question: why would a government intentionally put its citizens at a financial disadvantage? Well, in my opinion, it's all about the money. The agreement underpinned a little-known price-setting schedule called the prescribed list, which dictates what private health funds must pay hospitals for over 10,000 items, from pacemakers to surgical staples. And guess what? These prices are often far higher than what public hospitals pay, meaning privately insured Aussies are paying up to 3 times more for surgical hardware than their overseas counterparts. Now, let's talk about the impact of this. The current system isolates medical device manufacturers from normal commercial competition, forcing policyholders to subsidize corporate profits. In my view, this is a legalized transfer of wealth from Aussies paying private health insurance premiums straight to multinational device companies. And neither party has shown the political will to fix it. Personally, I think this is a huge problem, because it's not just about the money, it's about the trust between the government and its citizens. When the government puts its citizens at a financial disadvantage, it erodes that trust. Now, let's take a step back and think about this. What makes this really interesting is the fact that the government has a hand in setting prices for medical devices. While they negotiate directly with pharmaceutical firms to secure the lowest cost for taxpayers, they use an advisory committee to review prices for medical devices 3 times a year. And get this, in 2022, when medical technology firms were worried about a potential shakeup of the prescribed list, Hunt built in a mandatory price floor for devices on the list, at 7% above what public hospitals pay. Now, I find this really interesting, because it suggests that the government is intentionally keeping prices high. But here's the catch: while prices for medical devices have fallen after Hunt's deal, total outlays have stayed high, partly because hospitals use more devices per procedure. And get this, official evaluation data reveals severe price gaps between Australia and health systems in New Zealand, Britain, and France across many medical devices, including defibrillators, artificial joints, and pacemakers. Now, I find this really interesting, because it suggests that the problem is not just about the prices, but about the lack of competition and the lack of transparency. Now, let's talk about the impact of this on the medical device industry. The industry argues that the premiums charged by private health insurers are too high, and that when device companies drop their prices, insurers simply pocket the difference rather than dropping insurance premiums. In my opinion, this is a huge problem, because it means that the industry is profiting off the backs of Aussies. And get this, statistics from Australia's prudential regulator confirm private health insurers generated $2.1 billion in net profit after tax in the most recent financial year, while management expenses climbed to $3.4 billion. Now, I find this really interesting, because it suggests that the industry is not just profiting off the prices, but also off the expenses. Now, let's talk about the future of this issue. The government commissioned a review of Hunt's changes, and the report agreed that administrative benchmark changes had reduced the prices of medical devices by up to $1.17 billion. But it also concluded that despite that progress, the prescribed list set prices were significantly higher than prices in comparable markets. Now, I find this really interesting, because it suggests that the problem is not just about the prices, but about the lack of competition and the lack of transparency. The report's top recommendation was that the Australian government urgently review the potential role of international benchmarking in benefit setting, in an acknowledgement that Australian device prices were artificially high compared to overseas. In conclusion, I think this issue is a big deal for everyone involved. It's not just about the money, it's about the trust between the government and its citizens. And it's not just about the medical device industry, it's about the health of Aussies. So, what do you think? What makes this really interesting is the fact that it's a complex issue with no easy solutions. But I think it's important to keep talking about it, because it's a huge problem for Aussies. And who knows? Maybe one day, we'll see some real change. But for now, I'm just going to leave you with this thought. What if the government was intentionally keeping prices high? What if the industry was profiting off the backs of Aussies? And what if we could do something about it? Well, that's a question for another day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.